Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month, we'll feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here's your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast. Today, our guest is Nadia Davis. And instead of reading the usual bio that I typically read, I thought it would be more fun just to read the back jacket of her book, because it's very compelling and I think it does describe her rather well. And the name of the book is Home is Within You. And Nadia will share what she wants about the book when she speaks. But let me read the back of her book. So, as a young Latina and Native American lawyer and former life of California's Attorney General and Treasurer, Nadia Davis has long been subjected to public scrutiny. In this powerful homage to finding one's worth in the face of mental health struggles, addictions, and public shaming, Davis shares her remarkable story. She reveals the depths of the darkness she went through, which gracefully offering transformational healing and an end to the choking grasp of shame. Lyrical and captivating, Home is Within You recounts the author's experience of trauma and addiction amid a highly publicized abusive relationship. Davis is brutally honest about her experience and generous in revealing the path she found to wholeness through spiritual advocacy, healthy co-parenting, and dedication to preventing generational trauma. Home is Within You shares one woman's courageous story to recovery as a mother and as a woman. And her narrative is a defense of privacy, parenthood, and autonomy. Like, if that's not compelling, I don't know what is. Okay, so Nadia, what else do you want to tell us about you? About your bio, I should say.
About the bio. I think that says it all. What is predominant in my life today is Kundalini yoga and breath work and meditation, and that without that, I wouldn't be living the work on a daily basis. And so I do want to emphasize the Kundalini yoga teacher and breath work and trauma healing aspect of my life today.
Yeah, so I think I took the easy way with reading your book bio, because I know that word in the yoga is hard for me to say. So I'm going to try, and it's okay to laugh at me, but please help me, correct me. Kundalini? Kundalini? Kundalini?
Yes. It sounds like a roller coaster. It's like I joke with people, and it sounds, very complicated and she type of yoga. But what compelled me about it at the most broken part, beginning my recovery, was the sound use, the breath use, the mantra use helped me to just feel safe in my body. It wasn't, I have to sit down and completely shut my head off, or the tap, tap, tap physical pain that I was feeling. It was like a bridge the Kundalini yoga uses that helped me so much, and I think can help other people who often we beat ourselves up when we can't shut our mind up or say, I'm not doing this meditation correctly. I can't do yoga. I believe there's a big misconception and a lot of shame that comes with those that begin a meditation or yoga journey, and Kundalini yoga just shut that down for me. And so Kundalini.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful. Now, Nadia, you are an attorney as well, not just your ex.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay.
Correct.
Because I was wondering, I thought so. I remember we were on the Trauma Research Foundation book club on YouTube together. And I think I remembered that about you. But so I'm guessing because you're an attorney, you knew what you could and could not write safely about your ex. The reason I'm asking is I'm wondering if he ever threatened to sue you for becoming public with the story.
Interesting question. The story was told for us in the press and the media that was maybe a quarter of the truths. And he supports the book. He helped me to fund the initial self-publishing. Now it is being released by a publisher. And no, he never threatened to sue. He has been fully supportive, is the practical answer. In the writing process, I made sure that I was very cautiously protecting our co-parenting. So I learned in wording to rephrase statements such as he was angry or came at me with anger to it seemed as though, he was angry and agitated. That is definitely a piece of advice that I could give to writers, let alone just when we're out and about in a community and have separated from a partner or spouse and are trying to manage a co-parenting situation. Thirdly, he has supported me throughout this recovery journey in one way or another and knows the real me, always believed in me as a mother and human being. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. So.
Wow. This is very interesting that he's been so supportive. I would think that he would feel defensive of your perception or your experiences of the relationship. Does this mean that he's taken accountability, responsibility? Has he gotten help?
It's such an interesting question. I, again, have learned that I only have control over my thoughts, my feelings, my reactions to him. And separate from 12-step sobriety work, I did a lot of codependency work and learned really that I can't predict, I can't expect that he would do his own internal work and change the way that he is. I can confidently say that our co-parenting today and him giving me the blessing of 2 additional children when I was 44, we decided to try again. And we have 7-year-old twins now. That is the result, direct result of my reactions to him. When I realized that acceptance of his reaction to my unhealthy choices in response to what was some abusive tendencies, that wasn't enough. That acceptance was also denial of those patterns. And then I had to leave the marriage, which I did 5 years ago.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. My next question is, before this relationship, were you in other relationships that had some sort of emotional, physical, sexual abuse? And then also, as a child, did you have any of those experiences?
Yes. And all of this is in the book, and how as a child, I am the survivor of sexual abuse at the hands of a doctor. And at the time, it was extremely confusing, and my mom became aware of it, and we never went back. However, there was no discussion, and my survivalistic mind had me just believing that I was a body. and my thoughts. I can reflect back and see that. And I do believe that racial bullying and things such as, you're a dirty, wash your face, dirty brown girl, really molded that self-belief. And I lived in that mode for years, as so many trauma survivors do. And later in life, I re-traumatized myself by seeking a sense of self-worth and saving the world and saving other people, and really was in a very fragile state after a near-death car accident and the sudden loss of my father and best friend when I met my ex-husband. And in that survival mode, hurting in every single way, emotionally, mentally, physically, I robotically entered another very, very emotionally distant, controlling public life and took a drug. He did offer a drug, and I got pregnant on the second date. And I do not believe that my clothes would have come off. All of this is in the book. If I hadn't been under the influence and continued in that marriage, in that mode, as long as I possibly could, and then repeated the same pattern of reaching out for help with somebody that was a peer that ended up sexually exploiting me and blackmailing us. And then it became the public story of shaming, and it just further branded all the self-beliefs and was really difficult to get out of for a long time. So
you've really been through the ringer. Well, that's for sure. So wondering, was drugs or alcohol part of your coping strategy? Because that would make sense, right? Is that something that happened to you?
Yes, I started drinking, I believe, alcoholically, and was successfully doing that in terms of, again, the outside image. Very much so after my father passed away. It was in this disassociated shock state. He died of a heart attack while I was in law school. And it was the way I could cry on the floor, sitting with my best friend who passed away a couple months after that from cancer very abruptly. And that was when my drinking increased. And I was in that mode from that point through when I met my ex-husband. And at that point was exposed to amphetamine that further made me a robot. And, I made that unhealthy choice. I do not blame him entirely. I can't. And that was really a pivotal point in my recovery where, again, I learned, and we can learn, what our truth is within and what we have control over. We cannot hear the word defect at the time. It's a very shame-based word. Right. You can't hear any of the branding, the negative branding, when you are a trauma survivor and struggling with addiction. And so for me, the pivotal point really was turning within and connecting to our initial, true, infinite being source that is whole and complete, that holds the only truth that matters, and that isn't changed by anything that anybody has said or done, including ourselves. And over time, connecting to what I call a home within is really what enabled me to interact more healthfully with the outside world and the branding and my ex-husband.
Okay. Do you always believe that you were highly spiritual, or did that develop later? The reason for my question, I'm hoping that you can help with the link between trauma, addictions, and spirituality. I hope that's not too big of a question for you. It might be too big of a question for most of us.
I love it. No, so I always believed definitely in something beyond this world. And I mean, I grew up Catholic. It did not come from that, but my parents were very selfless, giving people, and it was more in a form of a indigenous nature connection. And then I had a near-death experience. I was not breathing for I don't know how long, with 22 broken bones, a punctured lung, my brain bled after being hit by a big rig. And that experience is indescribable. And in that space, everything made sense. It's just not describable. And throughout the years after, I struggled with making sense of what that experience was, and then this finite world. And it wasn't really until through breath work, through sound, through feeling safe in my body, and then realizing I am not a body nor my thoughts, that I was able to connect again to that. And that is home. Home is what created all of us. There's no fear or judgment. And whatever we believe started life, started the galaxies, is, astrophysicist doesn't think of emotions such as fear or judgment. And in that space, I can remind myself that that's where my truest form comes from, and then become more aware of how our minds are survivalist in nature, and thus create attack thoughts. And so what I try and share with others, and also in parenting, I don't use that word, but if we can know that what we feel vulnerable about is what we are taught to feel shame about, and I can educate my children and others in recovery that the fears and the judgment and feeling vulnerable comes from something that we were taught to feel bad in or about ourselves. And if I can teach children and others to dive into the fear, that it's okay, that when we are judging ourselves, this is your mind, it isn't your true self, but we're merely trying to survive, then it gets a little easier on a daily basis to be gentle on ourselves, to give self-love, but also, most importantly, to recognize when others are projecting, and to remove ourselves in a situation or pause. And it's a practical tool of spirituality that I use. And that's the basic steps that can help somebody is simply sitting down, observing thoughts. Most are attack thoughts based on fear.
Right.
And then knowing it's just a thought and breathing through it.
Yeah. Yeah, I really loved what you said about the vulnerability and the shame piece. It triggered a memory that one of the blog posts I have written about is when I made a mistake. And I never told anyone ever until I wrote it on the blog post. Like, I never told any of my friends, any boyfriends, husbands, no one. And I was just like, I'm always asking people to be vulnerable. I need to own my own shit. So I wrote out the blog. And it was a story about how I basically stole something. And I won't get into detail because I want to highlight you. But what I really remember feeling after I wrote it, other than the release of the shame, the guilt, it was fascinating. Like, my realization was, oh my God, the world didn't end. It's fine.
That's how the book feels. Yeah. That's great that you did that. And that was heroic and for yourself, But
it's a small story, but
requires vulnerability. Dr. Monica Franco does a lot of really cool stuff on this, and human connection requires vulnerability and sharing something risky, quote unquote. But she says nothing is inherently vulnerable. What is vulnerable is, again, what we're taught to feel shame about. And that's the human condition, is very much shame-based. It's, this black and white, right and wrong, and really, I think it's the epidemic of human living is what we are made to feel shame about, and it disconnects us with those struggling, and myself struggling with trauma recovery and addiction and chronic pain, grief. It is so isolating.
Yes.
It's there's something wrong with me, and no one will understand. And when we share, like you did heroically, someone else connected to that. Someone else learned from that. And that's beautiful that you did that. That is why I'm so brutally honest in the book, is there's this human story behind this scandal that the media made. And when I talk about banning shame, I not only talk about within and the steps that I delineated here, but when we are connected to our truth within, we can stand up against shaming everywhere, whether it's on the schoolyard, in the grocery store, or a rampant article that can subtly say, loser committed suicide. I've seen that. Something so terrible.
Yeah.
That we can say, what's really going on with this person? They don't need to put it all out there, but human by human by human, when we start asking those questions and doing what I do believe that shame will lessen. I think the grasp on society can be lowered through the stuff that you do and through the sharing of the stories.
Yeah. I think most of my secrets are out at this point. I might have one or two that I'm not quite ready to release yet. We'll see how that goes.
Well, we have the right to decide,
I think that's a beautiful statement too. Thank you for that. So Nadia, on your healing journey, I've heard spirituality and yoga were pretty big ways. I didn't want to use the word big. I wanted a different word, but it wouldn't come. So I stayed up too late last night reading my book. So I guess what I want to ask is, what other healing modalities did you tap into during your healing journey so far, other than the spirituality and yoga?
Thank you. I have a variety of things, and it's really 3 sources. Through Kundalini yoga and breath work and feeling safety in my body, I was really able eventually in the last phase to do heavy duty trauma work. I wasn't ready before. I had done therapy but I wasn't ready to go back there to childhood and do EMDR, for example. I felt overwhelmed. I didn't know where to start. And so I have done EMDR and trauma work. I've worked with the same therapist for 6 years. And one of the woman that she collaborates with was the one who did the EMDR, who is also an inspiration to me in a variety of different ways. So therapy work, intense trauma therapy. I've done a lot of readings. And then my therapist also introduced me to some of the mind understanding. So some of the stuff in A Course in Miracles, that's understanding attack thoughts. And then more of the deeper studies in Kundalini yoga, including level 1 and level 2 trainings, that it wasn't just a physical learning. It was mind and meditation, conscious communication, authentic relationships, and the learning continues, but those 3 things are part of my life today. So I'm very blessed to have been able to do that. And each layer was equally important, for sure. All of it is shared in the book. All of it is shared in the book.
So how would you, lack of a better word here, judge where you are on your healing journey? Like, do you feel like the hardest pieces of what needed to be healed is done? Are you still very much a mess or a work in progress? Like, how would you describe that at this point?
such a good question. I am a work in progress, and I know that in terms of, getting off of my self-sufficiency, my self-will, knowing my limitations better. And I say that because my sponsor had me really analyze powerlessness and unmanageability in terms of, it's not a physical disease or life is manageable and wreckage is cleared, but what are your limitations? And that has helped with carrying on other people's projections and their stuff, and not really being, I guess, more protective of myself. And so those are two things. The third thing is that the core wound, there's a core little girl in me, a core wound of a sense of worthiness, of being damaged, of being abandonment. That core wound comes up in finally allowing myself to be loved by another. And so the greatest thing that I have learned in terms of relationship is that anything anybody does is either an act of love or a cry for love. And that when I am triggered, when we are triggered, that it is my work to go and sit back and say, okay, what core wound came up? What is blocking me to receive the love that I am, and that the love that is being given is being offered to me? And so that is daily. That's constant. And that's something deep in my psyche that got me in the situations that I got in with unhealthy choices. It doesn't completely go away, yet tuning in with the safety in my body and having that home within, and that I share with others, that I wish I could just instill in everybody that's hurting, is so important. And from that space, I am able to see when that core wound from childhood is triggered and is preventing me from being the love that I am and helping others. But also, more importantly, today as an adult woman, divorced, from accepting love and safety from another. I had not allowed that in my life for a very long time. So finally,
you deserve that.
myself to do that, and it brings up that stuff,
Yeah, some of the stuff we know how to work and overcome and succeed, kind of like law school. Relationships are so messy. If relationships could be more like school, where you just do the work and it's done and you get your degree, but it's not like that in relationships.
Exactly. Yeah, it's different. And again, trauma survivors, we're those that have gone on in life. It's like, it's really nice and cozy and safe and self-sufficiency and self-will. And it's nice here. I don't want to take the risk. I don't want to, put myself in a situation where you can be hurt. Yet when life has evolved and manifested in a way where there is no reason to not give what is healthy and secure an opportunity, where most importantly, there's spiritual practice. There's not two minds trying to figure something out, when both have a practice and a higher power that really is the ultimate place to resolve stuff. And there is safety. That's how I feel. Why not then use this as an opportunity to further heal the core wounds when there are triggers? That is living the work. That's some of the stuff that I share on my social media.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know that we talked about this before airing, but I want to share it now. Nadia has sent me 2 of her books. One is autographed, which I am going to be selfish and to keep. The other, oh, I'm going to hold it up too. The other, I have my blur on because of the background. The other, we have decided together that I would send it to someone as a gift. So Nadia, this is my thought, and if you think we should do something different, it is your book, so I will defer to you. What I'm thinking is if you are one of the first person listening to this podcast, and if you send me an email that says, I want this book, the very first email I receive will get it. Send your mailing address. So it's really important the minute you hear about the giveaway to go ahead and send out the email. And I think that we'll declare winner that way, unless, of course, Nadia has a better idea.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to match that. Whoever sends me an email saying that they would like the book, you can send the extra one you have, and I'll also send one to somebody. The book release date is April 25th of this year, which might be around the same time as this airing. So you might be somebody that will have it in your hands before others.
Awesome. I didn't even consider it wasn't out yet. I know you sent me an advanced reader's copy, so I should have considered that. That's super cool too. Okay, so let's share our email addresses. You go first, Nadia.
nadiadavis, .homewithinyou @gmail.com. NADIADAVIS, HOMEWITHINYOU @gmail.com. And then my website has everything there. So that's www.nadia-davis.com.
Thank you. Our email at healthrivedream is healthrivedream@gmail.com. Nadia, is your homepage the best way for people to reach out to you, that or your email? Is that the best way?
The website, the homepage has links to a lot of healing offerings that I do, the newsletter, and other events and information, and the pre-order of the book also. Email, everything is there. So
okay,
check that out.
I know that sounded like I was going to end, but I do have one very important question left. And so I think that this is a great question for you. My sense. I am a huge reader. I feel that books are so healing. And I know you probably have a big library, and we're already going to link your book. But if you could tell us your top 3 favorite, you can only pick 3.
Oh, yeah.
To share. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Brené Brown's Rising Strong, A Radical Awakening, Dr. Shefali is great, and Indigenous Healing Psychology is wonderful.
Indigenous healing.
But as you can see, this book has quite a bit. Rising Strong is a wonderful place to start on your shame recovery journey.
I love that book too. Tell me the second title again. I think you said Irrational.
A Radical Awakening. Dr. Shefali. She talks a lot about conscious parenting. That's a great book. Of course, Glennon Doyle's Untamed, but that's number 4.
Yeah, we got to cut you off because this will go on forever because I think we have that in common. Okay, so thank you. We're going to have in the show notes also a link to Nadia's homepage where you can order the book, the Amazon link once it releases, and also 3 of her book recommendations. Nadia, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for the work you do, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.